with lies the moment they placed that little girl on the altar, that I had forgotten what it meant to be helpless. So, I accepted their sacrifice. I took the girl, and I left the village, and never returned. I went as far as I could away from that place, and did my best to take care of that little girl. She was small and frightened at first, but grew to trust me over time. We traveled south until we reached a great cliff with a waterfall, far away from the little people. I built her a little house of stones at the top of the cliff, right next to the waterfall, with a spectacular view of the forest below. I didn't even think to ask her name until she took the initiative to tell me, much later. Names have no meaning in the forest, but I discovered it was Sekniet, an old and beautiful name I will never forget. We were together for a long time. She grew up, and once again, more little people discovered us. Once again, they would come and ask for advice at first, and once again, their requests would grow to be increasingly more and more demanding. Untrusting of the little people now, I would often withdraw or refuse to speak to them. Often, I couldn't even understand their noises anymore. But Sekniet would take over and represent me in my stead when the weight of it all became too much. She even put feathers on her head, like me, in order to gain some trust and status from the visitors, so they would eventually come to understand that I trusted her. After a time, it almost became expected that she was the one you would speak to when you came to me, which I was fine with. She never once misrepresented me. We were both children of a similar fortune, abandoned by fate, but then entrusted with something special we could use to help others, and I knew she could be trustworthy. I slowly came to understand that she was good at what she did. I watched her mend divides, forge alliances, and eventually even end a war. I was a simple person of the forest, but she was a politician, and she knew how to use my name and power to change the little people, to make them better. I loved her, more than I even loved that little monkey. She was kind, gentle, but intelligent and uncompromising. She taught me things I had never heard of, things she learned off from our visitors. We had no needs, so knowledge was paid for with knowledge. Forms of what I would later find were arithmetic, astronomy, philosophy, and more slowly arrived bit by bit. It gave me a new window into the world around me, one I had never given its due consideration, despite being more ancient than many of the trees. It always amazed me that these little people were so creative and intelligent, and it was her. She was the one in the end who inspired me to put my faith in them again. I started to take a more active role once more, but being mostly stuck in one place. I studied and philosophized and tried to make myself useful to the little people in the ways I could. I slurped up knowledge and offered it back to any who asked. I was too big to move so freely around the woods now without leeways to it, but the little people seemed more than happy to come to me. Sekniet even gave me a name, and while the little people had called me many things before, this was the one I truly took to heart. And in those years, my heart grew nearly as fast as I did. When she died, I was once again heartbroken. It was a tragic accident. Nearly 140 feet now. I was so massive, it was hard to even move through the woods anymore without trampling everything in my